From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually, you hear me and see me talk to my friend Hector Bosa on the phone. Unfortunately, Hector hasn't called in yet. As you may know, Hector has also been suffering from several maladies that have been slowing him down. Unfortunately, he's not with us right now, but we're hoping that he can call us when he has the time. By the way, if you have a story that you want to have told on In the Bleachers, we would love to know about it. So you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and you can tell us all about this story that you want us to tell. Well, it's mid-September, which means football season is finally in view, and the baseball pennant races are heating up. There was so much going on over the weekend that I really don't know exactly where to even begin. Let's start with the NFL right now. Unfortunately, the Giants have looked the same way as they did last season when they won only 6 games. And going into this home opener to start the season against Denver, the Giants were basically looking to improve on last year's disappointing season. So it's gotten to the point where the Giants really have to buckle down and basically make do with what they have. And we start with Daniel Jones. Now, the media has been saying that Daniel Jones basically was telegraphing all of his throws yesterday. Unfortunately, when they were driving to try and make the score a little bit more respectable, he wound up fumbling the ball away. Once again, Daniel Jones commits the most inopportune turnover in the game. And it wasn't just Daniel Jones either. The defensive line stunk. The third down defense especially was completely deplorable. And unfortunately, the offensive line that the Giants have continues to be a work in progress. And when going up against a defense like Denver's, which has an all-world player in Von Miller, it's kind of hard having to make any excuses about what went wrong in yesterday's game. Basically, Daniel Jones, although he was not terrible, wound up telegraphing a lot of his passes yesterday. So the Giants now have 3 days in order to prepare for the game against Washington on Thursday night. As for the Jets, there was so much hope going into the start of this season because of what Zach Wilson was bringing to the table. He wound up having a pretty solid camp. But then yesterday, he wasn't terrible, but he did commit a turnover at the most inopportune time. And he showed a little bit of athleticism, too. But if you want to point to one statistic as to why the Jets lost this game, look no further than the defensive line. They made no effort whatsoever to try and get to Sam Darnold. And speaking of Sam Darnold, it was he that wound up getting traded by the Jets to the Panthers over the spring. You don't think that he was circling this game on his calendar? He's not going to say much because he's a really understated kind of guy. but he had to have wanted to get revenge on the team that gave up on him after 3 years. Now, as far as the Jets in general, at least they didn't make it, at least they weren't blown out. Let's put it that way. The score was only 19-14. And again, look no further than the defense giving up scores at the most inopportune of times. There was one person that I failed to mention, and that was Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley basically got he was basically held back a little bit. Well, maybe I shouldn't say held back, but the Giants were going a little slow with him, which explains why he had 10 carries for 26 yards. Now the Giants have to go into Washington to take on a team that suffered a disappointing loss of their own when they lost to the Chargers. So I wonder what the Giants can do to try and stop the Redskins. As it turns out, the Redskins are now going to be without their starting quarterback, the ex-Jet Ryan Fitztragic, for the next 6 to 8 weeks after he suffered a major injury yesterday. So this is probably the best time for the Giants to get themselves a victory here. Because if they lose to Washington, which is, believe it or not, the defending Eastern Division champion, if they lose to the Redskins, there's no way that the Giants recover for the rest of the season. Now, checking out what else happened in the NFL, we'd be remiss if we did not mention what happened this past Tuesday night when the Buccaneers, the defending champions, wound up hosting the Cowboys. It was such an entertaining game yesterday. Not only did Tom Brady just shred the Cowboys secondary, Dak Prescott, who was coming off a major injury, wound up playing superbly yesterday. The only thing was Tom Brady was just a tad better in spite of the 2 turnovers that he committed. So now, let's see what the Buccaneers can do for an encore. They are the defending champions, and it's gotten to a point where, with Brady and company, anything is possible. Now, while Brady led the Buccaneers to an opening night victory, his former team, the Patriots, wound up on the short end of a 17-16 score against Miami. You could look at this in 2 ways. One, the Patriots wound up giving up the game-winning score at the most inopportune time. And 2, the Dolphins might be a little bit better this season with Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback. Now, checking out some of the other games that took place, probably the biggest disappointment has to be Green Bay. They wound up getting their butts handed to them by New Orleans, and now the Saints will be going into next week on a real high. Jameis Winston, of all people, became the starting quarterback after Drew Brees retired. And Jameis Winston looked really, really sharp last night. So hopefully the Saints can wind up starting themselves off with a bit of a streak. The big question that was asked on ESPN was whether Jameis Winston could be the guy that could make the Saints better. We're going to have to wait and see. I mean, even after a great performance like yesterday, momentum is only as good as how the quarterback goes in the following game. By the way, I want to say thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass for helping us out tonight. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we got a signal that Hector was on the other line. Is that true, Kenny? Well, we're going to see if we can try and bring him in. You there, Hector? Nope, I guess not. Well, unfortunately, we have a little bit of a connection problem, so hopefully we could try and get this thing fixed. As far as the other games, probably the biggest disappointment that occurred over the weekend. There was more than a share of disappointments going.
Hello.
Oh, here we are. You there, Hector?
Yes, I am here.
You don't sound too good.
Yeah, no, I am here, ready to play because the hottest, baddest, sexiest man on cable access TV loves broads, women, milfs. Say it, I like it. So here I am.
Okay. Hope you feel better though, because you sound like you're in a.
So what were you up to in the Maryland of the football?
Well, I just spoke about the Jets and the Giants, and we were going over the other games that took place over the weekend.
Who won and who lost?
Well, as you know, both the Jets and the Giants lost.
They didn't lose anybody.
Well, the Jets lost one of their linemen, Mekhi Becton. He's going to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks.
And Danny Jones didn't fumble.
Actually, he did fumble. He was driving down inside the 20, and unfortunately, he wound up having the ball taken away from him, and it led to a field goal. And all of the momentum of that drive just got sucked out of them when the ball was recovered by the Broncos.
As we were speaking before on the phone, I was wondering the same thing that everybody else is wondering. Because of the contracts that these quarterbacks come up and have when they first sign, it's not like before where because sometimes, unless you were an exceptional quarterback and they really needed a quarterback, most of the time, the first string quarterback would have to sit at least a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So, now that being said, they're not sitting anymore. They're playing right away. And because most of the time, the team needs a quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, with Daniel Jones, from what I keep on hearing from the other radio stations, and that is if Daniel Jones does not perform very well, he's gone and Gettleman's gone.
They should focus first on the guy upstairs, which is Gettleman, because he's done very, very little to try and improve on this team.
I mean, he did pick up some nice players.
For this year, yeah. Adoree Jackson and Kenny Golladay.
Exactly. He did a little bit of something. But if he doesn't do anything, if Gettleman nor Daniel Jones, I would assume, they're gone next year. They are gone because if with Gettleman, they have to have a better season that they had last year, or at least make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And with, I think, Daniel Jones, as someone that I heard say, and that is he has to have a year where it was better than the last 2 years that he's been on the team. He's got to show that he can get that ball into the end zone with whatever receiver he has, because most, as we were talking about before, and that is that most quarterbacks, if you're good, well, if you're exceptional, you can carry a team, and you can throw it to anybody, and they may that wide receiver one of the best in the game. And that's a la Tom Brady, let's say.
Right.
But if you're good, he's got to have a decent game at least. He's got to go down, get some more touchdowns than the past 2 years. If he doesn't, because I think his contract is up, I think this year or next year, he's done. He's got to have a better. But what would you consider a decent, 3,000 yards, 2,000, or some type of yards? And he's going to fumble. So how many fumbles would you allow within the season? How many yards would you allow within the season, and so on, in order for you to keep him?
Well, first of all, as far as the turnovers are concerned, he has got to cut down on them, because when the Giants were driving, they actually looked good out there. But then Daniel Jones decided to make the mistake of diving forward instead of sliding, which would have blown the play dead.
Right.
Other than that, he really didn't do that much yesterday. Not only that, but each time the Giants seem to be going 3 and out on every other series. And because of that, it put more pressure on the defense. It puts more pressure on the defense because Denver's defense was doing all they could to try and stop the running game that the Giants were trying to muster and the passing game that the Giants were trying to put together.
Okay, but now the question is, what would Daniel Jones have to do in order for you to keep him?
Put them in the playoffs. I mean, I may not sound realistic here, but a playoff berth is crucial for this franchise. I mean,
okay, now let's say he doesn't make it to the playoffs. How many yards would you have to give him? How many fumbles would you give him throughout the year, and so on?
That's the problem, Hector. You can't go by statistics.
No,
you have to go by what you're looking at out in the field. And as far as this goes, he has to cut down on the turnovers.
I understand
first and
that.
Foremost.
And the turnovers too. I'm just saying, how many fumbles would you give him for the season in order for you to keep him? To me, the person said at least 10. They would give him at least 10 fumbles, and about 7 interceptions. That's it. If he goes over that, he's done.
I wouldn't give him any fumbles or any turnovers, to that matter. He's got to take care of the football.
Because the thing is, you have to be realistic, and that is, if you know the man's going to have, the majority of the time, he's going to throw interceptions, and he's going to fumble, right? We all know that because of his past experiences. Now, if you go by what he did the first 2 years, if you look at his record and see how many fumbles that he did, interceptions and all that, and let's say he had 20. Let's say he had 15 fumbles and about 12 interceptions.
Oh, that's too much right there. You can't give the ball away 27 times and expect to win. It just doesn't work that way.
That's what I'm saying. So I wish you can figure out what was his ratio on interceptions and so on, because then you can gauge how many yards would you give him as well, because a lot of times, even yardage, I mean, they may not have the greatest wide receiver, but if you have a real good quarterback, sometimes a quarterback makes that wide receiver the golden receiver there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I'm asking. what is what? How many of all those things? Because what was their record last year?
There was 6-10.
6-10, and they almost made the playoffs, I think, because
because the
horrible.
NFC East is woeful.
The whole team, yeah, they were horrible. But that's what I'm getting at. Do you have his record? Do you have his record to see how many TDs and interceptions he's thrown?
Yeah, I can just go into Pro Football Reference and do it.
Yeah, please do so, because I think this is interesting at this point, because if you compare other quarterbacks to him, they have to. You have to compare it, whereas how much has he thrown? For yardage, at least.
Well, he's now in his third NFL season.
Okay.
And his first season, he had a 3-9 record when he took over for Eli Manning.
Okay.
3,027 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions.
And how many on the fumbles?
This is disappointing. Unfortunately, it doesn't say how many fumbles.
Oh, okay. Don't worry. What about next year?
Last year, 5-9 record, 2,943 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
10 interceptions. And how many yards?
2,943.
Okay. So now that you know at least that statistic, how much would you give him?
Here we are. He had, so far he's fumbled the ball 30 times in what is now his third season.
So you split that in half for the season, you would say?
Yeah. So what you're trying to tell me here?
And that would be, oh God, that would be what, about 17? 17 per season?
I'm not sure I understand.
No, if you split, that's 2 into 39.
Oh, 19.
19 per season.
That's still
19
too much.
19 fumbles per season. So to me, if you go by that route, he would have for me, he would have to have at least 10 fumbles. How many interceptions?
He's thrown, he's fumbled the ball 30 times in 3 years. And he's also thrown 21 interceptions in those 3 years.
In those 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that means
Counting
he's thrown 7 per season.
Yeah.
That means, all right, if you give him, let's say, 10 fumbles, 5 interceptions, or at least 4, and how many yards?
He's got to do better than 3,000 yards. He's got to go 4,000, 4,500, 5,000 yards passing if he wants to.
Exactly. That's what I mean. He's got to do something like that in order for you to keep him. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't show any improvement in any of those categories, he's gone. He's got to go. Well, because that way he can say, well, it's not me, it's the team. But he's got to go. If he doesn't do it this year, he's gone. He's got to go. He's got to go.
Well, the Giants should have known what they were in for when they decided to draft this guy in the top 10 back in 2019.
Yeah, but they did. Look how much praises they got from the from the coach and Gettleman too. Think about it. The coach he didn't want Manning. He didn't want Manning anymore. Eli Manning. And the way they treated Eli Manning was ridiculous in the first place. Not that he was doing any better, but they wanted to hook the coach wanted to hook Manning out as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then Daniel Jones comes, oh, he's great. He's going to do it. He's going to do. How many times did you hear that?
Too many.
This is the quarterback of the future. He's going to get us through. Okay, he messed up last year. Okay, this year we got it because now he knows the plays. Now the defense is right. Blah, blah, blah. And look what happens. He does all that and gets hurt at the same time. He's got to show something this year. So you would say he would have to at least throw down, get 4,000 yards for you to keep him?
4,000 or 4,500 at the least.
Okay, 4,500. Cut down on the TDs and cut down on the fumbles.
Throw more TDs, especially inside the red zone.
I mean, touchdowns. Yeah, okay. Throw touchdowns, but interceptions. Cut down on the interceptions and cut down on the fumbles, and you'll be fine. So if it was, like you said, it was 17 fumbles, to me, he's got to go down to at least 10 or at least 7 fumbles.
Or he could do this. He could try and protect the football a little bit more.
Yeah, but if you know he's going to fumble, the man's going to fumble either way. You know he's going to do that, right? So how many fumbles do you give him for this year?
5.
So that you keep him.
I give him 5 fumbles, or he's allowed 5 fumbles.
Okay.
He's got, bottom line, he's got to learn how to protect the football, and so far he just hasn't done it. And that turnover that he committed was probably at the worst time because the Giants were driving for a score.
Yeah.
And Jones, instead of sliding like most quarterbacks do, he decided to go head first to get the first down. And then he had the ball knocked away.
All right. Well, he's a tall dude. He's a pretty big kid. Probably thought he can handle it and try to get in there just to get the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, get the initial yardage that he needs. But so you give him 5 fumbles. How many interceptions for the year?
Less than 10.
Okay. And 4,000 yards?
Either 4,000 or 4,500. I would like to see him go for 5,000, though.
And how many TDs would you give him? Because they don't score at all. They're just like the Jets. They don't really score.
I would say 40 touchdowns.
Okay. So if he doesn't do that, he's gone. He's gone. He's gone next year. He's got to show that he can do that, even if he has a bad team.
Yes, but Hector, there's a problem. The crop of quarterbacks that are coming out of college this year do not look great.
Well, maybe they'll get a veteran quarterback. Maybe they'll who are the other 2 backup quarterbacks?
On who?
On the Giants.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Glennon is the other quarterback that the Giants have. But they're already committed to Daniel Jones, regardless of how terrible he may be in a particular game.
No, I know they're committed for the year. I'm just saying he's gone next year. If he doesn't do it, he's gone next year. And Gettleman's gone.
I want
If
to.
they
I
don't
want to
file
see what the
Gettleman, he's
Giants
gone.
do first before they commit any hasty decisions.
No, you give them the year. I like I said, you give them the year. You give them the season. I'm not saying cut him in half the season. I'm saying give him the season.
Mm-hmm.
That if he doesn't do well, and you set him those goals, if he doesn't hit those plateaus, he's gone. And Gettleman is done for.
He
Because
should have been done for after last year.
That was his boy to begin with. That was the coach and his boy to begin with. Because they could have gotten a veteran quarterback, I think, this year. I forgot what's his name. They would have had to have given up a couple of people just to get them. Who was it? The guy from the Texas Rangers?
The Texas Rangers?
Not Texas. I apologize. The Texas. What's that damn football? I'm sorry. I'm totally blanked out right now. But that quarterback that was having problems with the team that he wanted to leave. Was it Aaron Rodgers?
I know Aaron Rodgers had his problems with Green Bay, but he seemed to have worked them out.
I forgot which quarterback wanted to leave. Was it the Texans?
The Houston Texans, you mean?
Yeah.
You're talking about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Could have been him. They were saying, and they had one of those two quarterbacks. And people were going, well, why don't you go after him? Why don't you go after him? And you heard Gettleman and coach said, no, this is our quarterback. We're not going to get rid of him. We trust in him. See?
Well,
they could have had a better quarterback, but they think this is the guy. Like I said, do you think he's gone next year?
Well, this is his third year. I doubt the Giants would want to panic and get rid of him so quickly. I mean, they've invested quite a bit in the kid.
That's the point. But the way like I said, it's not like in years before. The quarterback was able to sit for at least 2 years. At least 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this because how many real quarterbacks from, let's say, the 70s and let's say the 80s, unless you were an exceptional quarterback, that quarterback learned at least for a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, they can't do that anymore because they get paid so much. And if they don't see any talent, that's it. And how are you going to, if you have the kid sign up for 4 years and your quarterback is hot for two or three of those years, how do you know if he's any good?
You know how you know if he's any good? You go by what you see.
In preseason and all that. And when he gets a chance to get in. Because remember, that's the old way they used to do it. Now, because the way the contracts are set up, he's got to perform. And he don't have that four-year, let's hold him. He's got 3 years. A quarterback only has 3 years to prove himself. And then you either keep him or you get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Look at the way the system is set up.
Yeah.
And look at how it used to be. A quarterback had to sit out at least for a year or so because they kept on saying he's got to learn. He's got to learn the game. Let him learn from the veteran quarterback first. Mm-hmm. Unless they needed a quarterback that day, he had to learn from a more experienced quarterback.
Right.
And how many years did he have to stay? About at least a year or two. Now, if you were Tom Brady and the backup quarterback, you were a young kid and you're trying to break in, and you're sitting behind Tom Brady, you're out of luck.
Forget about it.
And there were a lot of other exceptional quarterbacks. But for those people that said, okay, we're going to bring you in, but you're going to have to sit for 2 years, at least a year or two. You have to learn from this guy.
Right.
How do you know you have something good if he doesn't play? Because your quarterback is really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's how come now they've exhausted 3 years, and that's it. If they don't show any progress within 3 years, he's done. Because they got to keep him. The contracts are up within that time frame. Let's say within the 4th year, before they go into the season. Because then you have to decide: do you keep him, or when the draft comes, do you get rid? Do you pick another quarterback? That's what you have to decide on the third. On the 3rd or close to 4th year, whenever the draft comes up. Do you keep the quarterback that's not doing well, or do you get the quarterback that may do well and cut this guy?
Obviously, you go with the guy that's doing better.
Huh?
You go with the guy that's playing the best.
Yeah, go with the guy that has the hot hand. Yeah, that's always expected. But if you trust your football team to, let's say, a Daniel Jones, and let's say he's not doing well, do you bring in your backup quarterback? Or do you say, no, that's okay because this is your team. We're gonna ride and die on this dude, like they did with Eli Manning.
Right.
Do you give him half the season, and if he's not doing well, you bring in your secondary? Or do you go and say, you know what, this is your season. If you don't do nothing this season, that's it. What do you do?
You go with the guy that you invested all your chances in.
All right. If you're willing to do that, then that means this is his year. So you're going to ride and die with this dude. He's got to prove himself this year. That if he doesn't prove himself this year with what you said before about he's got to throw at least 400 or 4,000 or 4,500 yards and a lot more TDs and cut down on this. If he does that and they don't have a winning record, okay, fine. But if they don't have a winning record and he doesn't achieve your goals, he's done for. You have to go for another quarterback next year. And then
like
Gettleman,
I said,
he's
the
done
quarterback
next
class of 2022 coming out of college is not looking good.
I know that, but what are you going to do? Give him another year so that he can be more disastrous?
If I'm the Giants and I see that there's not a great quarterback class for next year, I still invest in that offensive line because it's not all Daniel Jones' fault.
That's true.
The offensive line continues to be a colossal mess. That's one problem. Okay. The other problem is the defense, especially on third down. On third down, they can't stop anybody. Teddy Bridgewater was throwing darts at his targets, the receivers that he has. I mean, you talk about an underrated quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, he's not going to put up all the flashy numbers or anything, but he gets the job done. And now I wonder what the Jets were thinking when they traded him away to New Orleans.
You see, this is what I'm getting at. You don't know what you have. What made him trade him?
What made the Jets trade Bridgewater? Sam
Yeah.
Darnold.
Huh?
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. Because that was another one that the Jets were in love with.
Yeah.
You see, and that coach, that coach hated the running back, Bell, Davian Bell. So they got rid of him. They loved the quarterback that they had. And you notice, is the coach still there? No.
No, he got replaced.
The Jets coach, and they brought in a new coach.
Yeah, Robert Saleh, a guy who I'm starting to show some respect for.
How so?
Because for one, he's a really passionate, fiery kind of guy. And for
the passionate sports fan like the one they doing in the bleachers?
just like all the fans that watch this show, yes.
So this is what I mean. That coach and the GM died on their sword by going, we want this quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave up Davian Bell, and you must have freed up a lot of money by giving him up.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, did the Jets improve on what they had to improve?
Well, they improved at quarterback, that's for sure.
Huh?
They improved at quarterback, that's for sure.
Okay. Now, I know they lost a couple of linemen.
Yeah.
But if they were there.
Especially Mekhi Becton. That was a really, really critical loss for them. Now he's going to be out between 4 and 6 weeks. And the offensive line is going to be much weaker.
Yes, exactly. But if they would have been, if they were not hurt, that's a damn good front line.
It's a little bit better.
And they're young too, so they can grow into the position.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you say that the Jets are on a rebuilding stage?
They're definitely rebuilding.
Okay. And the Giants, are they on the rebuilding stage, or are they on a fire sale where they're going to say, oh, we got to get rid of people?
I think the Giants can get away with a rebuilding job because of the salary cap, but they really have to be smart with the maneuvering of the roster.
Hey, it does happen, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tell you, that other coach from the Jets, he swore up and down he had the greatest quarterback of all time too. And as I told you before, he was going to get. I told you that he wasn't going to survive, and he didn't survive. And the GM is still there, or did he go too?
No, the GM is still there.
Oh boy. Well, that's right. Because, okay, that's another one. Now, if the GM, with his moves, because he had plenty of dough that he could have gotten exceptional players, and he wound up getting, did he really get name players, or did he really get no-name players?
I don't want to call them no-name players,
well,
but
not no. I'm sorry. You're right. That's the wrong way. But I don't know how would you call them?
Guys that flew under the radar. Let's put it that way.
Okay, fine. Did he get guys that flew under the radar, or did he get, or he had the opportunity to get named players?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't. So, tell me, how do you gauge him? Because he could have had some named players, and he went on and he did. He wound up getting players that are under the radar, as you want to say. So how are they?
I mean, the moves that they made were pretty quiet when you think about it. But at the same time, the draft that they had was pretty critical. And it all started with getting Zach Wilson to be the quarterback. And I saw his debut yesterday, and he didn't look terrible, although he did commit a really critical turnover at one point in the game. But Wilson showed a little bit of athletic ability yesterday, and he was able to muster up a couple of touchdown drives. Although that second one was pretty much garbage time by the time the Jets were able to score. But when you think about it, Wilson did not look bad. I think he could benefit with a better offensive line, but I guess that just comes with time.
But they are getting better. They're trying to get better on the offensive line because they did draft people for the offensive line. And if they continue to draft people, because I think they have a couple of draftees for next year, if they continue to build up that front line, if they're on a rebuilding stage by at least the third year, they should have a damn good front line, an exceptional front line, if they draft properly. And they don't lose anybody as they did this year, because one guy is out for the year, and the other guy's out for 6 to 8 weeks, like you said. And those two were critical players. Critical. So how it's tough. Well, I'm glad they're on a rebuilding stage, and all I'm saying is that GM, does he have to look out for his job next year?
If you mean Joe Douglas, not necessarily.
Yeah. At one point, do you say when is his job on the line?
Well, he practically just got here, so I think it'd be a little premature to try and
in 2 years, because let's say his contract is 5 years. Do you give him 3 years and then that's it?
I don't think so. I think he deserves a longer leash than that.
So you give him 4 years.
At least 5 years.
Okay. But, all right. Because if you notice, most of the GMs and coaches, they don't last. They only last 3 to 4 years. And then they cut them right away. Haven't you noticed that with around the teams, that within 3 or 4 years they don't exist? Now, when it comes to the New York Knicks, if you survive 5 years, you're amazing. But their coaches last between 2 to 3 years. So this is what I'm saying. It seems that there's a pattern that you have to do something within 3 or 4 years. If you don't show any promise within 3 or 4, you're done. Even though you may have a contract, let's say, of 5 to 6 years or 7 years. And is that the truth?
Yeah, I would say so.
And in most of the games that were played this week as well, what did you think of them?
Well, I was surprised to see how badly New Orleans beat Green Bay. That's for one thing.
Why would you say that?
Because for one, Green Bay has Super Bowl aspirations, and they have their big guy, Aaron Rodgers, back at quarterback. But the way they played yesterday, it just defies all logic.
Do tell, what happened?
Long story short, they got their heads served on a platter.
Really? They lost that
not
bad?
only that, but Jameis Winston, who's now the guy with Drew Brees retired.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston threw for at least 3 touchdowns yesterday. Let me go to the NFL app here, see exactly how he did.
You see, the last time the Giants had one of those type of quarterback, it was Eli Manning.
Mm-hmm.
And when was the last time the Jets had a quarterback like that you know of?
Way a while back. Joe Namath, maybe?
Oh, come on.
No,
Phil
seriously.
Simms?
What did you want me to say?
Phil Simms.
What did you want me to say?
Phil Simms. I think Phil Simms was good enough.
Are you talking about the Giants or the Jets?
Oh, the Giants was. I'm sorry. The Giants was Phil Simms, and the Jets were Eli Manning. Correct? No. I'm sorry. Phil Simms was on the Jets. Help me out here. Am I wrong in what I'm saying?
Well, you say the last time the Giants had
When was the last time? Was it Eli Manning was the last quarterback?
Yeah, Eli.
Eli, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and Phil Simms played for the.
Phil Simms played for the Giants.
Okay. But Eli Manning and Phil Simms. All right. Now, who was the last guy that the Jets had? Ken O'Brien?
Oh, not Ken O'Brien.
Come on.
I mean, he was the epitome of mediocrity. I don't know how he could take that team to the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Look at that. He took them to the playoffs.
Probably the best guy that they had at quarterback was Vinny Testaverde.
Vinny Testaverde?
Yeah, and maybe after that, Chad Pennington when he was healthy.
Oh, explain those two. Explain Testaverde and Pennington, please.
Vinny Testaverde was basically a guy who was a turnover waiting to happen. That's number one.
Okay.
But he did have his fine moments with the team. He took them to an AFC championship game. He led them to the playoffs on the last day of the 2001 season when they beat the Raiders. But unfortunately, his star dimmed when he started the 2002 season, throwing one interception after another. Chad Pennington was a guy who started off reasonably well. I mean, he was able to help the Jets win a division title in 2002, and they went to the playoffs. Then there was 2004 when he probably had one of his best seasons, and they were 2 butchered field goals away from going to the AFC Championship game, but wound up losing to the Steelers. And then there was 2006. He took them to the playoffs again. Unfortunately, he wound up getting hurt during the 2007 season, and then he was let go, and Miami picked him up, and he wound up leading the Dolphins to an AFC title game, but unfortunately, they lost in the first round of the playoffs to the Ravens.
And did he play after that year that you know of?
He wound up finishing his career with the Dolphins, but he had a plethora of injuries that he was not able to recover from.
Oh, okay.
The main one was a rotator cuff injury.
Oh, yeah. So Chad Pennington was the last great quarterback that sent him to the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so would you say that we haven't had a Chad Pennington in the last how many years then?
Oh, about 15
years,
years, maybe.
Gauge your quarterback. That's what you have to gauge him. The last good quarterback that did anything for the Jets was Chad Pennington.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who you have to gauge. So they just haven't had a Chad Pennington in a long time.
Yeah.
That's a damn shame.
Mm-hmm.
That's a damn shame.
Yeah.
Mm. So continue. The head in the platter.
First of all, we were talking about the Packers and the Saints. The Saints won that game because, for one, Aaron Rodgers could not take care of the football, and for another, they had zero rushing game.
Who?
The Packers had no running game whatsoever.
Mm. Who's coaching that team again?
Who's coaching the Packers?
Yes.
Let me try and find out for you.
Because Aaron Rodgers is a damn good quarterback. He may be a little. How old is Aaron Rodgers about?
He'll turn 38 next month.
Oh, that's why. All right.
He could still play. In fact, he could probably go another 4 or 5 years if he really wanted to.
If depending upon which football team if he goes to a football team that's ready to make the playoffs, yeah, he can run. So that team, the Packers, do you think that's a ready team to make the playoffs?
Oh, without question. I mean, they won the I think they won the division title last year.
Yeah. So that being said.
Oh, and for the record, Matt LaFleur is the head coach of the Packers.
Okay. All right. So his job is not on the line.
No, not even.
Win. So what was it? The front line that gave out, or the other team was just that damn good?
Let's get back to this thing. Plain and simple, the Saints were just that good, and they were magnificent defensively, picking off Aaron Rodgers twice. And Jameis Winston, who's now the quarterback with Drew Brees retired, had to have thrown at least 3 touchdowns in the game.
Oh, wow, okay.
His numbers didn't really show it. 14 out of 20, 148 yards, 5 touchdowns. He threw for 5 touchdowns yesterday, which means he accounted for all of the scoring inside the red zone.
All right, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Now, if he can do that in the next 7 or 8 games, I think you would have to look at New Orleans as a potential problem down the road.
Okay, continue down the line about the rest of the teams.
All right. First off, the Chiefs came from behind to beat the Browns. The Steelers came from behind to beat the Bills. 49ers outscored the Lions by 8, but that was a much more lopsided game. The score at one time, I think, was 41-16. Probably the best performance of the day was by the Cardinals. They just destroyed the Titans. And they're the ones that have a pretty good quarterback on their hands, Kyler Murray. The Bengals beat the Vikings in overtime. The Seahawks beat the Colts. Say what you will about the Seahawks, but without Russell Wilson, the Seahawks do not look like the same team. And unfortunately, we have about 30 seconds left, so I'm going to have to bid you adieu, Hector.
All right, so let's sign off.
All right. Thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass, and of course, thanks to you guys for watching at home. So, for everyone here, I'm Jamie.
I'm Hector.
We hope to see you next Monday night. Good night, everyone.
Night, night.